For the first half of the 20th century, really the semi-automatic shotgun was the Remington Model 11, also known as the Browning A5. After World War II, Remington developed a series of shotguns, including the 1148.
The Remington Model 1148 was Remington's first new shotgun introduced after the close of the Second World War. Its name, 11-48, comes from the fact that it was a more streamlined version of the pre-war Model 11, and the 48 was the year of introduction. It's a semi-automatic shotgun with a tubular magazine, and it was part of the new line, the new generation of post-war sporting shotguns that Remington took to the field in those immediate post-war years.
Remington got the idea of developing a family of guns that would all look similar and would perhaps be able to share some components. If not, at least could share the machinery that would make those components. And this was a sort of a revolutionary idea at the time.
Well, with the Model 1148, Remington was coming into the era of the less expensively produced shotgun. It was still like the Model 11 that it replaced. It was a long recoil action shotgun. But with the 1148, Remington began to go into the use of stamped steel internal parts. It still had a machined steel receiver. It still had enough, certainly enough quality to be a solid gun. But we began to see how the industry began to look for manufacturing economies versus the old days for the kinds of scale that were now required in a post-war economy where you had more and more sportsmen taking to the field.
The Remington 1148 is a recoil operation, and which was the same as the Model 11 from which it derived. And it's kind of a bridge gun between the old recoil operating system versus the gas system, which we now see today is commonplace. Right around the World War II era, there were very few gas-operated sporting arms. That was the domain of the military at that time. So it was using this technology that was developed throughout the Second World War and adapting it to sporting arms is where the 1148 kind of helped bridge that gap between then and when the Model 1100, Remington's gas-operated shotgun, finally arrived on the market.
Although the Model 1148 was created in 1948 and probably a bit earlier than that, they were actually unveiled in January of 1949, and there was really two versions. There was your standard version as well as your Sportsman version. Your standard version was your higher price model, whereas the Sportsman was your value priced model. It came in 12, 20, 16, and in 1952 the company introduced the 28 gauge version. That was the first large scale production 28 gauge semi-automatic shotgun out there.
Less than a decade after the 1148 was introduced, Remington introduced its first gas-operated semi-automatic shotgun, the Sportsman 58. And this, with the gas operation, this gave a much more pleasant recoil signature than the long recoil Model 1148, and certainly offered some advantages in that regard.
One of the chief advantages of a gas-operated shotgun is reduced recoil. When you have a recoil-operated gun, in particular, say the Auto 5, you feel every bit of the recoil. You feel the moving of all those parts. What a gas-operated gun like the Model 58 did was bleed off some of that energy, and it changed the recoil dynamic. The bolt spring, their mainspring, was being compressed. So it would seem that a gun like this did not recoil as hard as traditional recoil-operated shotguns.
Between 1949 and 1968, the later date being the discontinuance of the model, there were nearly 500,000 1148s made. And of those, most were 12 gauges, and probably the least would be your 410 and 28 gauge. And those two are the ones that command a premium on the used market. Outside of those two models, the 1148 is actually a pretty good deal. These guns are very serviceable, they're very utilitarian, they're going to serve you well in the field, and anywhere in the 60 to 90% condition, you're going to get a semi-automatic shotgun for less than $300. In some cases, you're going to get around to $200 to $250 mark. So it's hard to find a new shotgun that will give you that same price as these guns will.